So you probably think the Blackout Challenge is old news, right? Just some fleeting online thing from a few years back. But our deep dive today reveals something pretty terrifying, actually. It's not just still active in 2025, but its persistence, this quiet persistence, is kind of fueled by the very algorithms that are meant to give us personalized content. We're going way beyond the headlines here to unpack the full story of this hidden danger. Okay, so our mission for this deep dive is to take all the sources you've shared, the articles, the research, our notes, and really lay out the full scope of this challenge. We'll look at its history, which is actually pretty surprising, exactly how it works, the profound risks it poses, and maybe most importantly, why it's still a very real threat this year, even if it's not constantly making headlines anymore.
Yeah, our goal is just to give you a clear, concise, and frankly crucial understanding of something that continues to impact vulnerable young people all over the world.
And it really is critical. I mean, not just because it might seem like some passing trend, but because it really shines a light on this complex intersection, adolescent vulnerability, the power dynamics of social media, and then these real-world consequences that are just devastating. Understanding this isn't about creating fear, it's simply about being informed.
Okay, let's unpack this then. What's truly surprising, I think, about the Blackout Challenge is that while most people connect it to TikTok, to this era, our sources show it's really an amplified version of something much older. We're talking about things like the choking game or the pass-out challenge, stuff documented way back in the 1990s. Can you imagine?
Yeah, before the internet as we know it, even.
Exactly. Before widespread internet, this was already a known dangerous activity. In fact, there's a really sobering CDC report from 2008. It linked 82 deaths specifically to these choking games.
82?
82 deaths among kids aged 6 to 19. Just between 1995 and 2007. So yeah, it's had this long, tragic history, even before it went viral online.
That history is so key. But what really changed everything, what turned it into the global issue we're grappling with today, was social media. Platforms, especially TikTok, just dramatically amplified its reach. It gained viral traction incredibly quickly around 2020, 2021. And it turned what was once, a dangerous, maybe localized, often kind of hidden offline activity into this massive, widespread online phenomenon.
And just for anyone listening who might not be totally clear on it, can you walk us through the basic premise? It's horrifying, but what exactly are participants doing?
It's tragically simple. Participants basically choke themselves, often using everyday things they find, like belts or ropes. They do it until they lose consciousness. And critically, they often film themselves doing it.
Right, the filming is key.
Yeah. And the allure for young people seems to be this brief euphoric high that comes from the oxygen deprivation, that combined with the promise of likes, shares, online validation from their peers. But the lethal risks are just immense and often tragically underestimated.
And what's particularly unsettling, I think, is how this challenge, even though it's maybe less visible than it was at its peak in 2021, it just keeps popping up. It has this sporadic persistence right into 2025. We're still seeing incidents, aren't we?
Absolutely. We are. Take, for example, just recently, April 2024, there was a case at South Orange Middle School in New Jersey. 2 students passed out after trying the challenge. One actually needed to be hospitalized.
Wow.
And it's not just a U.S. problem either. In February 2025, so very recently, lawsuits were filed. These were by the families of 4 British teenagers: Isaac Knaven, he was 13, Art Battersby, 12, Julian Jules Sweeney, 14, and Maya Walsh, 13.
Huh.
All of them died back in 2022 in incidents linked directly to this challenge.
Oh, God, those ages.
I know. These recent cases just hammer home the ongoing danger, and the lasting impact this has had.
So let's dive into the how and why a bit more.
Yeah.
When we look at how this challenge works, the mechanics behind it.
The mechanics are grim. It's self-asphyxiation. Simple as that. Participants use ligatures, things like belts, purse straps, whatever's handy, or sometimes even hyperventilation. The goal is to restrict oxygen flow to the brain just enough to cause a brief loss of consciousness. And like we said, the whole thing is often filmed, then shared online, usually with specific hashtags, right? Hashtag Blackout Challenge, hashtag Passout Challenge, all for views and validation.
And if we think about the psychological side, this appeal seems really deeply rooted in adolescent vulnerabilities, isn't it? What's going on in the developing brain that makes this somehow compelling?
Exactly. That's a huge piece of it. Teens have an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex.
Right, the decision-making center.
Precisely. That's the part of the brain responsible for judgment, decision-making, impulse control. Because it's still developing, they're just inherently more prone to risk-taking behavior. And crucially, they're highly motivated by seeking peer approval. Mitchell Prinstein from the American Psychological Association, he points out that social media just massively magnifies this peer influence. It basically creates this global audience for cajoling, for pressuring each other into these dangerous acts.
And it's not just the peer pressure itself, is it? Because the way these algorithms work on social media, they can actually push that pressure directly onto vulnerable users.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, that powerful and just heartbreaking example of 10-year-old Nyla Anderson. She died in 2021. She saw a Blackout challenge video on her TikTok For You page, or FYP. She hadn't even searched for it.
That's the scary part.
Right. It just shows how these algorithms can actively push dangerous content right into the feeds of impressionable kids, whether they're looking for it or not.
And that algorithmic push, combined with the neurological factors we talked about, makes teens uniquely vulnerable. It's a perfect storm, really. Beyond their brain development and the algorithms, there's another point Jacqueline Nesi from Brown University makes. She talks about how teens often misestimate social norms. They see a viral post, maybe a few kids talking about it.
And they think everyone is doing it.
Exactly. They start to believe everyone is doing it, even when that's nowhere near the truth. That perception of universality can be a really powerful motivator. And then, tragically, there's often this critical lack of parental awareness. Warning signs might be missed.
Like what sort of signs?
Things like unexplained bruising around the neck, maybe increased secrecy, withdrawn behavior, or even just hearing them talk casually about pass-out games. These signs aren't always recognized until it's devastatingly late. It's often this silent, insidious threat hiding in plain sight.
The appeal is one thing, but the cost. Tragically, it's far too often measured in human lives. Let's talk about the grave consequences. What are the immediate health risks here?
The health risks are enormous and immediate. We're talking about starving the brain of oxygen. Just 3 minutes without enough oxygen can cause permanent neurological damage. Permanent.
1 minute.
And 5 minutes, that can easily be fatal. So beyond the risk of irreversible brain damage, there's the obvious ultimate risk of death by accidental asphyxiation, which we've sadly seen happen far too many times. And then you've got the secondary injuries too, right? Falling during unconsciousness. That can lead to severe head trauma, broken bones, even spinal injuries. It's not just the act itself, it's the uncontrolled environment it often happens in.
And beyond those immediate physical dangers, what about the psychological toll for those who might participate and thankfully survive?
Oh, absolutely. There's a psychological impact, too. Participating in these kinds of risky challenges can definitely exacerbate existing issues like anxiety or depression, or it could even lead someone down a path towards an addiction to risky behaviors. Remember, this is happening during adolescence, a critical period for brain development. Engaging in this can actually disrupt that development, potentially leading to longer-term psychological consequences.
So what does this grim picture tell us about the human cost? I mean, in terms of actual lives lost, what are the numbers we're looking at?
The numbers are just heartbreaking. Between 2021 and 2022 alone, the Blackout Challenge was directly linked to at least 20 deaths.
20 deaths in just that short period.
Yeah, and of those 20, a shocking 15 involved children under the age of 12.
Under 12.
15! It's devastating. Hearing those ages 8, 10, 12, 13, it just underscores how incredibly vulnerable these young kids are to something that might seem like a harmless game online.
It's profoundly sobering, isn't it? Just thinking about the innocence involved and how silently these dangers can creep into homes. Can you maybe remind us of some of those specific cases again, just to make the impact really visceral for everyone listening?
Yes, I think it's vital we remember them as real children, not just statistics. Nyla Anderson, who mentioned earlier, she was just 10 years old, died in 2021 in Pennsylvania. She used a purse strap after seeing a video on her TikTok FYP.
Just 10.
Then there was Alani Erica Renee Walton. She was only 8 years old, from Texas. Died in 2021 after watching Blackout Challenge videos. Police confirmed her participation.
8 years old.
And in the UK, Archie Battersby, he was 12, died in 2022 after 4 long months on life support. It followed a self-strangulation attempt that his family and doctors linked directly to the challenge. These aren't just isolated incidents, they are real children, real families shattered.
Given those outcomes, you'd really hope this challenge would just vanish. But, as our sources show, its quiet persistence is still a serious concern. That April 2024 incident in New Jersey we mentioned, it really highlights how it's still present, especially in school environments, right?
Yeah.
Where peer influence can spread awareness of these things so quickly.
And that persistence is definitely fueling a significant legal pushback now. We're seeing lawsuits like the one filed just this February 2025 against TikTok. It was brought by the Social Media Victims Law Center. They're basically alleging that the platform's algorithm specifically targeted vulnerable teens with this kind of challenge content and that it contributed to the deaths of those 4 UK kids we talked about earlier.
So they're directly blaming the algorithm's recommendations.
Exactly. And the legal landscape might be shifting here. There was a really significant ruling in 2024 from the Third Circuit Court of Appeals. It was in the Anderson v. TikTok case involving Nyla Anderson. The court actually reversed an earlier dismissal of the case. They held that TikTok's algorithm recommending content constitutes expressive speech, which means it might not be fully protected by Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act.
Ah, Section 230. That's the big one that usually shields platforms from liability for user content, right?
That's the one. So this ruling could potentially open the door to increased platform liability for the content their algorithms actively promote. It's a big deal.
Now, platforms like TikTok, they do claim they're taking action.
Yeah.
They say they block searches for hashtags like hashtag Blackout Challenge. They proactively remove, the vast majority of violating content. But how effective is this really, given that we know it's still out there?
Yeah, that's the core challenge, isn't it? The reality is there are always workarounds. Users just switch to slightly different hashtags like hashtag passout challenge or other variations. Or they move the activity to private groups on other platforms. Telegram is often mentioned, places where it's much harder for moderation efforts to find and stop it. It ends up being this constant cat and mouse game between the platforms trying to moderate and users finding ways to evade it.
So with all this in mind, what can actually be done? What are the most effective prevention strategies we should be focusing on?
Well, prevention really has to be multi-pronged. There's no single silver bullet here. First, and this is absolutely critical, is parental oversight.
Okay.
This includes maybe using monitoring tools, things like Bark or PureSight are sometimes mentioned, but perhaps even more important is just having open, ongoing conversations with kids about online risks, really talking to them. Parents also need to know those physical signs we talked about, neck marks, bruises, behavioral changes like secrecy, or hearing them talk about pass-out games, being aware. Second, education is vital. Schools really need to integrate digital literacy much more effectively, teaching students how to critically evaluate online content, understand the risks of viral trends. Clinicians, like pediatricians, also have a role maybe in screening for social media-related risks during checkups.
Right.
Third, we need more platform accountability. That means improving the AI moderation to detect this stuff, even in private groups, which is tough. And maybe developing real-time warning systems for users who encounter or engage with harmful content. And finally, promoting positive alternatives is important too. Redirecting that teen energy towards safe, engaging challenges, dance trends, fitness challenges, creative stuff can help fill that need for validation and connection in a much healthier way.
Yeah, and it feels crucial to understand that the Blackout Challenge, as awful as it is, isn't really an isolated incident, is it?
No, not at all.
It seems to highlight the much broader systemic issue. Social media's power to amplify dangerous trends. We've seen it before, right? Think about the Blue Whale Challenge or even the Tide Pod Challenge years ago. They all seem to exploit similar aspects of teen psychology. The risk-taking, the peer pressure, and they rely on algorithmic curation to spread like wildfire.
Absolutely.
And this raises really crucial questions, not just about platform liability like we discussed, but also about responsible media coverage. We have to be careful not to sensationalize these stories in a way that could inadvertently spark copycat behavior. There's a really delicate balance to strike. Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly summarize the key takeaways. We've looked at the Blackout Challenge's origins way back to the choking game and how social media just poured fuel on that fire. We've detailed the specific mechanics, the self-asphyxiation, and the psychological vulnerabilities in young people that it exploits, and tragically, the real-world consequences. Brain damage, death, devastating losses for families. And finally, we've touched on the ongoing battles for prevention, for accountability, the lawsuits, the platform responses. Understanding all these dynamics, it feels absolutely crucial for protecting young people in this digital age we live in.
It really is. And what's maybe most fascinating or perhaps chilling is just how much power a simple algorithm can wield, how much influence it has.
Yeah.
And it highlights how vital it is for all of us as individuals, as parents, as a society, to become much more fluent in the language of online influence. Hopefully, this deep dive prompts everyone listening to think a bit more critically about where their information comes from, how they engage with it online, and especially how we protect the safety of the next generation navigating this complex landscape.
Absolutely. And if you found this deep dive valuable, if you want to keep getting great information like this and stay informed on important topics, be sure to visit Mind Expansion Daily. It's a really fantastic resource for staying curious and keeping yourself well informed. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive today.